also give you the peace of mind knowing that you did get that top dollar. Frank Leo and Associates at 416-917-5466. That's 416-917-LION. Or go online to getleo.com. That's getleo.com and start packing.
Toronto Contractors, Heyman here, founder and CEO of Renault. As a contractor for over 20 years, getting materials on site when they needed them was always unpredictable. So I created Renault Run, an online material store with same-day delivery. We're like Amazon, but created just for builders. Become a Pro member and get unlimited deliveries for only $100 a month. Stop going to the store and boost your efficiency today. Get more done with Renault Run. Shop at RenaultRun.ca now.
I'm Randy Kilburn. Health Canada not quite ready to make a decision about approving the COVID-19 vaccine from AstraZeneca. Now, a couple of weeks ago, it signaled the ruling could be imminent. The World Health Organization gave its seal of approval to AstraZeneca on Monday, but Health Canada is still having a back and forth with the British-based company over clinical results. With snowy weather south of the border snarling vaccine deliveries to our country, Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller says he fears the prospect of a highly transmissible COVID-19 variant taking hold in First Nation communities. Miller says the variants are of particular concern to vulnerable Indigenous people. Oh, that pastor at a Central Alberta church previously charged with violating Public Health Act orders, he's still behind bars. James Coates appeared in court on Wednesday. He turned himself in on Tuesday, but he was denied bail after refusing to agree with conditions. Here's what Pastor James Coates had to say during his sermon on Sunday.
Whether or not we're being persecuted makes absolutely no difference to me. I don't think that I could care any less about whether or not this meets the definition of persecution. That doesn't even factor into the equation for me. That's not the basis upon which I'm doing anything. I'm doing what I'm doing in obedience to Christ.
He's in court again next Wednesday, February 24th. Senators handily approving a bill to expand access to medical assistance in dying with amendments that would relax access even more than proposed by the government.
A revised version of Bill C-7 has passed the Senate 66-19 with 3 abstentions. 5 amendments to the bill would expand assisted dying to people whose natural deaths are not reasonably foreseeable. That would be in compliance with the 2019 Quebec Superior Court ruling. Advocates had argued that people in extreme suffering, but not close to death, should be able to end their lives. Roger Ward, The Canadian Press.
From the Global News Desk, I'm Randy Kilburn.
Once again, here is Charles Adler.
We're talking about the classic church versus state confrontation. State, or in this case, the province of British Columbia, does not want indoor gatherings in many, many places, including churches. Heck, they don't even want indoor gatherings at your own home when you're gathered with people who aren't generally living in your home. So that's the law, and that's the rule in many parts of the country. It's called COVID-19 and public health regulations. And so there is a court case that is about to begin in March where 3 churches in the Fraser Valley area of British Columbia are saying they've got the constitutional right to have these gatherings, COVID or not, and the province and their public ban is violating their charter rights. We're going to go to a professor of religious studies in just a few moments, but I want to give you a text from Andrea in Langley. Langley's where one of these churches happens to be. She says, "This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I understand it's tough not to be able to go to church, and it's frustrating when you see restaurants, pubs, and hookah lounges open. That shouldn't be happening either. No social gathering, period. So places to gather socially just should not be open. I drive by all night and see large groups of 20-somethings gathered outside, not social distancing or wearing masks. That's wrong, too. Rules are confusing and causing these problems. I think to ask for churches to be exempt based on freedom of religion, are they also magically going to be exempt from contracting and spreading COVID? Well, of course not. This isn't about religion, Charles. This is about being socially responsible. Andrea in Langley. Andrea, thank you. Thank you so much. So, without further ado, let's go to a very eloquent person who understands church and state, understands religion, why people turn to religion, what motivates people who are religious in general, understand that religion is a very, very big umbrella. He's a professor of religious studies at Crandall University in New Brunswick. John Stackhouse is his name. Professor Stackhouse, welcome back to the microphones.
Good evening, Charles. Nice to talk to you again.
Do you have a specific position on the question, do religious people have a charter right to gather, regardless of whether or not there's a pandemic? Do religious people have the right in this country to gather?
For sure. I think today's court decision, that's, I'm sure you'd agree, Charles, is pretty narrow, but it does raise three major issues that this court case will as well, if I may. I think firstly, and very briefly, the question of church meeting isn't a very big deal for most Canadians, but it's a very big deal for some. Church attendance, as we track it nowadays in Canada, probably 10 to maybe 20% of the population goes weekly to church, maybe even more often. That doesn't sound like a lot of people, 10% or so. But across the country, that makes 5 to 6 million people who take church so seriously they go every week or more often. Charles, that's 4 times the number of people who watch Hockey Night in Canada. That's 10 times the number of registered hockey players in the whole country. That's as many people as go to Tim Hortons coast to coast in a day. So the first thing I want to say is we're actually talking about quite a lot of Canadians for whom this is a very important part of their lives, even if it isn't for lots of others. I think secondly, I want to say that the metric for success for Dr. Bonnie Henry, whom I certainly like and certainly respect, but the metric for her success, of course, is medical. But this is a political question, as I'm sure you recognize. There's lots more going on here than just not getting sick and not dying. It's the balancing of goods and harms. My concern here is that the Prime Minister of Canada, with his public health officer, and the Premier of BC, they really can't outsource this to their public health officials. You know, they can't stand behind them in the sense of hiding. They've got to make these tough decisions to balance the goods and harms. Because as you said yourself, I think very well, at some point, if we really didn't want to get the numbers to drop, we all stay home and never go anywhere. And of course, that's not what we want to do. So in answer thirdly to your main question, the Charter is very clear that people have a right of association, that all of us have the right to freedom to practice our religion. And so in a case like this, the burden of proof, and it should be a pretty heavy burden, Charles, the burden of proof has to lie on those who would seek to curtail religious freedom. And so respectfully, I want to just ask if Dr. Henry can really show, over a year now we've been dealing with COVID-19, can't you really show that the dangers of church meetings are so much worse than other kinds of meetings? Or is she guessing, however intelligently? Now, I don't know the answer to that, Charles, but I think to me she has to show that if she's going to be fair to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The burden of proof is on her to demonstrate that they really shouldn't meet. And so the court case is going to be very interesting indeed.
Well, there's no doubt that Bonnie Henry, along with lawyers, are going to be arguing vociferously because if they lose at this, they're also going to be losing with a number of other people who want more social gatherings. And while the other people may not talk about religion, they'll talk about it in human terms. They'll talk about it in terms of how important it is for social animals, about human beings, to be able to socialize together. And of course, a judge will have to balance all this out. But I want to ask you this, based on someone who has taught religion and